Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around I'm playing as the Empire against the Vampire Counts, led by Void Lols on the map, Schwarzhofen. And we're doing a bit of a Goon Squad build again. I did run several Goon Squad builds, or at least a handful of Goon Squad builds, back in the day on Warhammer 1, when we still had a 3 hero limit. And of course that allowed me to cram in one additional hero, a Jade Wizard on the Pegasus. But I wanted to do a Flying Goon Squad, give it a shot. So I decided to run Karl Franz and 2 Amber Wizards. Now, right off the bat, I made a pretty significant mistake in this matchup, and that was actually the fact that I forgot to put my items on Karl Franz. This is not something a mistake I usually make, but unfortunately, I did not put either Galmaraz or the Reichland Runefang on Karl Franz, which was a huge mistake, and it's definitely going to hurt me a good amount in this game. For my front line, though, for my lords, I did decide to bring Karl, though. Of course, and this was originally simply to bring Runefang and Galmaraz, but Karl Franz is actually still a pretty solid hero. He still has decent melee stats. He has 100 armor, which is very nice. Okay mobility, very solid weapon strength, of course. Charge bonus of 90 is very nice. All that sort of stuff. So he's just very strong overall. Definitely a little bit stronger than the Amber Wizards, and of course he causes fear and terror, which is fairly relevant against undead. But undead are very susceptible to large units, kind of just barging through them. They don't have the greatest counter against large units. And it's why, for example, Shaggoth's Giants are pretty strong against him. So I figured that Karl could do pretty well here on his Griffin on Deathclaw. Alongside him, I did bring 2 Amber Wizards. Both of them, I put Power Stone on both of them. And on one of them, I did bring Flock of Doom as well as Wisdom's Wild Form. I do have Wild Heart on both, which is actually a bit of a waste because with one not being able to cast, it's completely pointless. But regardless, these guys, of course, are pretty comparable to Karl Franz, but they have half the armor and somewhat lower melee stats and lower charge bonus. And, of course, lower HP. My front line is composed entirely of unbreakable units. Some Tattersouls, Flagellants, Sigmar Sons. All of these guys will trade really well against the cheap, low-end undead infantry. If my opponent brings Graveguard, then these guys will not have a good time. But for that, I do have my Lords. I do have the Silver Bullets here behind them. And then I do have some Altdorf Griffites and Demigryph Knights with Halberds. And these guys are there to counter the large units that could potentially cause trouble for Karl Franz and the Amber Wizards. So like, for example, Crypt Horrors and Blood Knights in particular. For my opponent, he did bring, and we'll throw things in the full year because we're basically pushing straight at my opponent. I'm trying to pressure him a little bit with Karl and the Amber Wizards here. But for my opponent, he did bring a front line composed entirely of Graveguard, as well as you can see some Sternsmen over here. Graveguard, of course, will absolutely dice through Flagellants. It's a very one-sided matchup there. But these Crypt Ghouls on the side will not have as easy of a time of it. Neither will these Skeleton Spearmen who are there to counter my large units. Behind that, a single Corpse Cart with Unholy Lodestone will be providing the Vigor Mortis aura, which will boost these guys' melee stats, or at least the melee stats of the units nearby. And, of course, we'll be providing some regen. On the flank here, my opponent does have some of the Dire Pack as well as the Blood Knights, and these guys will potentially provide a very, very powerful anti-large Goon Squad. I'm definitely a little worried about what they can do, for example, to my Demigryphs. They just mob them and hit them together, or if they catch an Amber Wizard on the ground or something like that. Up in the air, my opponent does have Manfred von Karstein with Spirit Leech, Raised Dead. I'm actually not, it's quite a collection of items here. Raised Dead, and Master of the Black Invocation of the Heck, and Master of Black Arts, which of course gives him increased power reserves and power recharge rate. He did not actually bring his Sword of Unholy Power, though, I do believe. So, actually, yes, he did. There we go. So, he's going to be capable of casting quite a bit in the way of spells, for sure. Now over here you can see my Silver Bullets are just unloading on the Mortis engine, trying to bring it down, but I'm forced to disengage here because all these infantry units are kind of mobbing up, and I don't want my troops getting caught. Over here, my Flagellants do actually get a nice charge off on the Crypt Ghouls, who don't quite manage to get a charge because they were trying to sneak back. And the ensuing fight, it should be pretty even, but I do believe the Flagellants will eventually come out on top. Oh, in the meantime, I do, because my opponent has clumped up, and I do push these Flagellants forward to time down, I am capable of getting a very, very nice Flock of Doom here. And of course, because my opponent is clumped up, he's not really going to be able to maximize DPS. One of the important things to do, and now you can see I'm really capable of starting to pressure this Mortis engine. Fortunately, the Silver Bullets have only gotten a few volleys off and are only being pressured by Skeleton Warriors, but because of this, the Mortis engine is going to go down, and that's going to be the end for them. Relative Griffites are shifting around to help the Demigryph Knights over here fight off the Blood Knights as well as the Dire Pack. And they're doing pretty well there. You can see the Silver Bullets are trying to reposition, but it's just simply not working out. You can see the Mortis engine has gone down, and I'm getting some rear charges in, which is actually causing some of these guys to start breaking. Obviously, Terror does not affect them, but the rear charges are pretty potent, and they're definitely racking up some kills, causing some damage, all that sort of stuff. By keeping them clumped up here, I'm definitely making my opponent's troops rather unable to maximize their DPS, really. Unfortunately, my silver bullets are being bogged down by a mix of skeleton warriors on two sides. Skeleton warriors do not have the best of stats, so they're going to take a while to beat through the silver bullets, or of course 9 veterancy handgun unit, but nonetheless they will eventually beat them down. Over here in the meantime, you can see the Royal Elf Griffites are trying to tear up the dire pack. You can see I do believe I got hit by a breath from the dragon, which drops the poor demigriffs down to health models in what was otherwise a pretty favorable fight. These crypt rules are still slugging it out. You can see over here another invocation of the heck has gone down and is actually healing a lot of these units back up. But I do get a nice charge here, and going after the corpse with the unholy lodestone, just trying to bring it down and stop it from helping all these troops. And you can see it's already dead. It simply just does not stand a chance against this Griffin Goon squad. Neither does really the Grave Guard, so most of my opponent's only real counters to this Goon squad were really Manfred von Karstein and this bunch of troops on the ground. You can see another breath goes down and hits the Royal Elf. This has actually been really painful for me this game. I didn't bring enough shooting, really, because I was investing so much in my flyers, so I'm not really able to zone away Manfred. I simply don't have the ground presence to zone him away, and unfortunately I don't actually have the mobility on any of these guys to actually catch him, because they only have a 90 speed, which is a little unfortunate. And I didn't bring, for example, a net of Mintok. You can see over here the Royal Elf Griffites are actually being zoned away, but you can see I'm able to catch the Dire Pack here with the Demigriff Knights, and they are going to be able to tear through them very, very efficiently. Flagellants, of course, are dealing fairly well with the Crypt Ghouls, and these Skeleton Warriors will hopefully go down, and hopefully I'll be able to disentangle those silver bullets. In the meantime, Carl and the Amber Wizard are slowly but surely trying to just demolish these troops on the ground, tearing through these Grave Guard. The Sternsmen, as you can see, are still very, very healthy, and of course they have regen. So they're actually going to perform rather well against Tattersouls and Flagellants and even the Sigmar Sons. You can see, by and large, my opponent's troops are definitely winning the ground fight. I'm at this point reduced to the single unit of low HP Flagellants, a handful of silver bullets, and a very small handful of demigriffs. I do get a very nice Flock of Doom here, and the Flock of Doom has definitely been one of the things that have been giving me a fighting chance in this. And you can see now Manfred does get a little greedy and thinks he can go in. Unfortunately, I do not have either Garl Maraz or Reikland Runefang, which would help me in a huge way with my melee stats, and because of that, Manfred is capable of kind of running away through his own troops and taking off. And of course his speed is exactly the same as my Griffins, so I'm not really going to be able to catch him. As you can see, my Tattersouls are at this point practically all wiped out, as are the Flagellants and the Sigmar Sons and all these troops. I'm definitely starting to run low on troops. At this point it's just a handful of demigriffs. The silver bullets are actually routing off, and they're down to 23 models, which is definitely not ideal. But they are recovering, and I'm hopefully going to be able to use them to pressure Manfred a little bit. You can see I do dive in, though, getting some rear charges, and this is one of the good things. I'm really capable of getting some good rear charges here on these troops, because technically these units are still intact. These guys are getting rear charged, despite the fact that there's only like a handful, less than 10 Tattersouls at this point. And obviously none of these troops can really stop me from taking back off, because none of them really have the mass to stop the Griffins. Now I'm kind of lining up here on the fringes. I'm waiting, really, for Manfred to decide to settle down. Manfred's definitely been a menace this game. His breath attacks have been absolutely brutal against my demigriffs. As I mentioned before, not bringing enough shooting has definitely been a nuisance for me this game. It's definitely been causing me a lot of trouble. You can see I'm about to be hit by another breath attack, which hits the Royal Elf Griffites and takes off multiple models there. I actually think that was 7, perhaps, models taken off, which is really, really brutal. Now you can see Manfred does go down now, realizing that his infantry is simply not able to contest the constant cycle charging from my Goon squad. He does kind of come down on his dragon, but you can see the demigriffs actually do get the charge off. They were waiting for him to come down, and now they're actually starting to pick him apart in close quarters pretty effectively. And at this point, I'm keeping my troops on the ground. I'm trying to shoot poor Manfred down with my handguns. You can see the Royal Elf Griffites are being spooked off, but the handguns are still firing away. Silver bullets will do a little bit of damage. There's still 23 of them around and kicking. And I do have the Trio of Lords down here. I do pop another Flock of Doom, and of course the Sternsmen, as you can see, have already hit their healing cap. Most of these units are really approaching their healing cap. I did, of course, have 2 Power Stones, which has been giving me a huge amount of mana reserves or Winds of Magic reserves, and that's really been allowing me to spam my spells pretty consistently. And at this point, my opponent does decide to simply end the game and kind of make his way out, realizing that really he can't contest with my three hero mob there with just Manfred. So I definitely made some major mistakes in that match. First and foremost, I didn't take Reikland Runefang. Second of all, I didn't take Reikland Runefang, which is the main problem, but lacking Golem Raz was also a problem. I could have definitely gotten a much better burst in some situations had I taken Golem Raz. I also made the mistake of bringing the trait for one of the Lore of Beasts wizards, despite the fact that I didn't put a spell on him. Now this was part of a mistake. Originally I had intended to have 2 Flocks of Doom so I could cycle between the two, but without waiting for the cooldown, but I ended up taking it off, and so that was definitely a bit of a mistake. I definitely made some mistakes as well with my deployment of Demigryphs. They got caught out pretty badly, and of course the fact that I didn't have much in the way of shooting ended up costing me pretty heavily when I was trying to deal with my opponent's Flying Lord, who I couldn't actually catch with my Flying Goon squad. Obviously, if I had brought, say, a Lore of Light Wizard, I would have been able to net him, but the problem is that would involve bringing a Lore of Light Wizard, which would strip me of one of my Amber Wizards, and that would have been a bit of a problem. For my opponent, you can see the Graveguard traded very, very well with the Flagellants, as was to be expected. The Spearmen did pretty horrible. The Crypticals did okay. Crypticals cost roughly the same as Flagellants, and they're basically in some damage-wise, they're basically specialized against the same stuff. Both Flagellants as well as Crypticals are specialized at beating down lightly armored, squishy infantry, and so when they're fighting each other, the trade reflects that fact. One of the problems for my opponent was that he got so clumped up, and because of that, he wasn't able to maximize his melee presence. One of the big things that you want to be doing if you have more melee infantry than your opponent is trying to get an encirclement and envelopment, maximize the amount of hits you're getting in, hit your opponent's troops from all sides, rather than getting bogged down in sort of a mosh pit like what happened there. And because of that, the vast majority of my opponent's troops were not fighting, whereas actually a decent amount of my troops were fighting constantly. The Blood Knights, as you can see, had a very, very bad trade with the Demigryphs, and it actually only ended up going in their favor because of or not in their favor, but the only thing that redeemed them there was Manfred von Karstein's breath attacks, nailing my Demigryphs and tearing off several models. In a 1-to-1, if you get both sides, you have a full charge off. Demigryphs still outtrade Blood Knights, so it's something to keep in mind. Demigryphs with halberds, specifically. I'm not entirely sure how it goes with Demigryphs, the vanilla Demigryphs. Corpse Guard, I think, is definitely not a bad idea, and so is neither is the Mortis Engine, but as you saw, even my single unit of shooters was able to kind of put it down fairly efficiently, and my Goon Squad, of course, was just brutalizing it. Regardless, good games with my opponent was a lot of fun, in spite of all the mistakes I made with the composition. I definitely recommend trying out monstrous builds against vampires. It's a lot of fun. Vampires don't necessarily have the best counters to them. If you're playing as vampires, and you're expecting a possibility of monstrous units, Terrorgeists are a good option. Crypt Horrors are a pretty good option. Potentially even Vargulfs aren't terrible, though I probably wouldn't recommend them. Obviously, bring a decent amount of spears, all that sort of stuff, and Blood Knights can be good. So you do have some options. You just have to be aware of them and be ready to bring them. But yeah, good game to my opponent. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions about Total War Warhammer or anything like that, be sure to post them down in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.